Namaste and welcome to Sangam Talks. We are here with Sundar Iyer today to discuss the Cisco caste case. Political activism, social justice warriorism, judicial activism, or even commenting on the geopolitics of other countries. But the favorite flavor of all of these remains India and Hindus in particular. Now, several forms of discrimination exist throughout the world. There is Nazism, there is fascism, there is slavery, there is the Girmitia system. But have you ever seen any of them being profiled for ethnicity, religion, or any social group? No. But Hindus remain the favorite whipping boys of all of these, and caste is the one stick to beat them with. Sundar Iyer used to work with Cisco and continues to defend the company even now. But the case of Cisco is a very strange one, and it woke most of the Hindus up to what remains in store for them in the years to come. Now, I'd outline a few facts of the Cisco caste case for you. It was filed in the year 2020 in the federal court. The California Rights Department withdrew the case from the federal court on the very last day because they did not think themselves that it had any legs to stand on. Then they filed a case in Santa Clara in October 2020. The case against Sundar Iyer and Ramana Kompella was filed by a complainant whose name was never revealed. And he was called John Doe. John Doe, for the information of our viewers who do not know, is a person who wants to remain anonymous in a case so that he or she is not at the receiving end of any of the backlash that falls out of the case. What California Rights Department did in this case is it profiled the Hindus of America racially, expanded the profiling to Indians in America. It connected a lot of data based on anecdotal facts. It started targeting lots of minorities. And then in January 2021, the Hindu American Foundation sued the California Civil Rights Department in the United States District Court for violating the civil rights of Hindu Americans residing in the state. Now, the next step was that the government fired the lead lawyer of the California Rights Department. Now, for more information on this, a very interesting site that you can all go to is castekit.org, which lists all the information and the following references of the case. Now, in January 2023, then subsequently, CRD withdrew the case but continues to sue Cisco. A few important facts of the case that I would like to present to you is, while the whole Cisco case brought on by the CRD or the California Rights Department was bogus and they knew it, therefore was there a hidden agenda in their bringing and keeping this case in focus? A lot of activists were also associated with the case. So what was their interest and agenda in keeping this case alive? An important aspect of CRD is that their court record shows they have about 30 plus corrupt actions listed against them, several contradictory, sanctionable, unethical and inconsistent actions listed by the CRD. Another important fact is, which is listed on cascade.org by the way, Ramana Kompella asked John Doe for weekly status report on request from his manager, Tom Edzol. The DFEH in their complaint defined caste as a strict Hindu social and religious hierarchy. Now, they then assigned Mr. Iyer a Hindu caste. Now, this was malicious as uncontradicted facts were provided to plaintiff as in the John Doe, during the investigation of Doe's administrative complaint. And they would also have known from public data that Mr. Iyer is publicly irreligious for decades. Sundar, welcome to Sangam Talks. We are here to talk about the Cisco caste case today. It consumed a lot of your time from 2020 to 23. Now, please walk us through the three main things that you felt are very pertinent to this case.
Sure. First of all, thank you, Rinku, and I wanted to thank Sarayu and Sangam Talks to host me. I wanted to start by saying one thing. I'm here not to talk about myself, but I'm here to talk to Indians, Indian immigrants, Indian Americans, and anybody who should care about the truth. I want to propose a very radical theory, which is, should a state agency speak the truth? And so, just to give context, I have been in Silicon Valley for almost 20 plus years. And in a startup of mine, I was accused of caste discrimination by a colleague of mine who I hired called John Doe. We will call him John Doe because he has filed an anonymous claim of caste discrimination. He went to the state agency called the Civil Rights Department, and the Civil Rights Department took the case and filed 3 charges: discrimination, saying that he did not get the head of engineering position because I discriminated against him based on him being a Dalit. They made a second claim of caste-based harassment. For your audience, harassment is a very severe charge. If you call somebody the N-word or आप कुछ गंदी व्यवहार करें, personal व्यवहार, that is considered harassment. So they claimed harassment. And there's a third charge of retaliation. Or retaliation charge के लिए you need a cause and you need an effect. It basically says that John Doe said something to you because of which you reacted badly and did something bad to him. So it requires 2 dates, a cause date and an effect date. So there are 3 charges broadly that the state has made, and they brought this case in June of 2020.
So why do you think, Sundar, a state agency would be complicit in such a case, which clearly, from whatever I have read of it, or our viewers would have read of it, seems to have no legs to stand on? Why did a state agency was so keen on pushing this case?
Correct. So maybe for your audience, important to mention the fact that John Doe has brought a charge of discrimination because he didn't get the head of engineering position. It's a position that he has never applied for. The position was formally open for more than 3.5 months. He's never applied for it. We also pointed out to the state agency that this position was actually first awarded to another candidate, another senior colleague of mine who also happens to be Dalit. So we told the state agency, you are trying to sue us for Dalit discrimination for a position that has been awarded to a Dalit. And in fact, I mentioned this several times, but just as a quick summary, there were 3 top leadership positions in my group. They were all given to a senior colleague of mine whom I hired. He's a brilliant guy, extremely hardworking. I've known him for more than 25 years. I've co-founded companies with him. And this brilliant senior Dalit was given all of these positions. In fact, the state of California hid this from the judge, from the courts, from the press, from the activists, and from the legislatures to create this case of caste-based discrimination. So that is the irony, and that is the sad aspect, that you have a government agency that is willing to hide information to create this claim of caste discrimination. And what I have told you till now, Rinku, is one amongst more than 100 different things that the state agency has done. And my journey here is to let the people know कि क्या हो रही है in a state agency, how bad not just the system is, but what is really sad is they are lying to Dalits, Dalit Indians, and Dalit Americans.
They have also listed that they have cases of thousands of Dalits who have sued for discrimination or have registered complaints of discrimination against them.
Right.
Where is this data coming from?
Right. Great question, Rinku. So to set context, the state agency has worked with an activist organization called Equality Labs. For the audience, Equality Labs is based in California, and they claim, I will use the word claim to be a Dalit civil rights organization. When you ask them whether they're a non-profit, they refuse to answer the question. There's no way to verify the claim that they truly represent Dalit Americans. It's not like they have a membership of 1,000 Dalit Americans or any such number. There's no published data. But that's fine. They went ahead and published a survey in 2016 that 26% of all Dalit Americans have been physically assaulted by upper caste Indian Americans in America. And in fact, the state agency has taken that and several other claims and made these allegations in court that there is widespread caste discrimination in America. Now, there are several problems with this. First of all, and the CRD goes further. They say Dalit Americans have been physically assaulted, raped, or spat upon by upper caste Indian Americans simply because their caste was known. There are no police records. This would mean almost anything from 4 to 20,000 such physical assaults or rapes. There are zero police records of caste-based physical violence in America. The state agency doesn't give a shit. Pardon my French. They don't care a damn. They use this information 8 times in multiple court motions. The judge throws this out. They go to appeals court and they push the same narrative.
Okay, so what was the attitude of judges and legislators in all of this? Were they supportive, or were they able to understand the entire case?
Yeah, so quick context here. The Civil Rights Department wants to make caste as a separate protected category. Now, important thing for the viewers, and this is very important for all of us, we all believe in just laws. I personally believe that any person who feels discriminated should have the right to bring a lawsuit. And in fact, the beauty of American laws is they are so broad that caste discrimination is already covered. You can file a case of caste discrimination under race, under ancestry, as a form of religious discrimination, nationality discrimination, what have you. You have so many knobs that you can use. So the good news is that these forms of discrimination are already covered. Now, the question you asked is, how do legislatures come into this? So the CRD, working with Equality Labs, used this case along with their survey data to push a law called SB 403. SB 403 was a law that they tried to create in 2023 to add caste as a separate protected category.
Who got this SB 403?
SB 403 was sponsored by a senator called Aisha Wahab. She's a freshman senator from the Eastern Silicon Valley district. Okay. So she sponsored the law.
So is she also an Indian American?
Aisha Wahab is actually the state's first Afghani American legislator. I think she grew up in the United States mostly, but has roots in Afghanistan. And you asked about how the legislatures looked at this. So before I answer that question, just to give you some context. So the Cisco case has already been proceeding for almost 2.5, 3 years by the time they tried to push this caste law. Okay. All of the data used in the Cisco case about widespread caste violence and crimes has all been thrown out by the judge. And I want to give you 2 more facts, just for clarity. The state makes a claim that there are 250 plus incidents of sexual harassment and crimes based on caste in the technology sector alone. There are 0 court records of that in the last 3 years since they made that claim. The state puts a letter from 30 Dalit women claiming caste discrimination in Silicon Valley. Now, I want to be upfront here. If any of these claims are true, we stand with you, Dalit women, right? We stand with anybody who has any claim. But if you read that letter, you will see something very surprising. उस 30 Dalit women की letter में no specifics have been given. That managers have not been named. What was told to them has not been said. किसने कहा, कहाँ हुआ, कैसा हुआ, कब हुआ, क्यों हुआ? Nothing whatsoever. There is 0 information in that letter other than allegations that we've all been abused based on caste. Of course, the judge threw out such a letter saying this is not admissible in court. In fact, it's not admissible to anyone with a sense of rationality or truth. But for the CRD, this is evidence. And that is an extremely sad state for any government agency. Right, so there are many such things that they try to push. Now, coming to your question, all of this has been thrown out by the Cisco judge. And you shouldn't even wait for a Cisco judge to throw it out. You should know, if you're an honest government official, that this is not admissible evidence. They use all of the same and similar body of information. They go to the legislatures. And I'll give you a bird's eye view of California legislators. I'm not a politician. I'm not involved in politics. I care about the truth. I don't even take a hard line to a caste law, by the way. Whether such a law should be added or not has several things that need to be discussed. The good news is caste is already protected, so it's not like you need to add it to get more protections. But I care about the ethics of the process. I have talked to legislatures. In fact, I talked to Ash Kalra, who's an Hindu American legislator. Here is the irony. I tell Ash Kalra, why don't you ask basic ethical questions about the data being presented? You sit on the judicial committee, ask the question, where are the 10,000 Dalit women who have been physically assaulted or raped? Do your fucking damn job. He refuses to do that. And this is the story of almost every progressive democratic legislature. Now, I'm not here taking sides between a Democrat and Republican, but a legislature that cannot stand up for a truth is a legislature that will lead to social collapse. As simple as that. अगर आप सच के साथ आप पाबंदी नहीं रखोगे, there is absolutely nothing you're going to achieve as a society. You will collapse in less than 15 years. This story is repeated time and time again across multiple legislatures. And thankfully, the governor made an ethical decision. Just looking at the data itself, you should know something is terribly wrong. But that's my short experience of talking to legislatures. I think there was one Republican legislator who stood up, Senator Shannon, and a couple on the Republican side, and some of the Democrats eventually said, "Dal mein kuch kala hai, let's stay away from this bill." But the bill still passed by 2:1 majority, mostly using what's called the progressive democratic whip. Okay. Now, I asked this question of the internet, are these progressive values? I mean, we're all, to an extent, I've always been a card-carrying liberal to an extent, right? We have liberal values. We want people to be protected, but not at the cost of truth. And so, when I look at the progressives in California or in America, the question I want to ask the head of the progressives in the Democratic Party is, do you care about the fucking truth? If you don't, we have much bigger problems.
I believe the CRD lawyer was fired and the governor took an exception to the case. But there were certain lawmakers who were quoted as saying that they want to push for a law in this, and they did. So do you think there is a larger body of people who want to push this kind of legislation or specific targeting of a certain social group in America? Is this happening really?
Just to give context to your Indian audience, the CRD has made several claims about Indians in India, Indian Americans, and Indian immigrants. Right? There are more than 35 plus xenophobic comments on Indians, including calling the upper caste as dominant, privileged, hostile, oppressive, inherently violent, that the upper caste bring their casteist attitudes from India to America. Guess what? They make this claim on a group. They make the claim on my own Cisco co-workers for a group where every position has been given to a Dalit. But facts don't matter to the CRD. If you can lie your way through to victory, great for you. And of course, you have a bunch of racial targeting of Indians. They don't just start with Indians, Indian immigrants, and Indian Americans. They go much deeper. I mean, working with Equality Labs, the founder of Equality Labs literally says that the Nazis are not Germans, they're upper caste Hindus. It's her statement. You have a state agency working with her. They go much further. The caste survey that they push says if Hindus migrate to the rest of the world, caste will become a world problem. This is on page 2, cover page of a survey that the state is using to push the narrative. What's even worse, and this is important for the Indian audience, so that they know how Indians are being targeted, the CRD uses NCRB data, the National Crime Statistics data from India. Now, the Ministry of Home Affairs has said this for almost 20 years in different communications, saying these crime statistics on the lowest caste should not be construed in a particular way. Here are all the caveats. We don't know the caste of the oppressor. If somebody says they've been assaulted, we don't know, and if a Dalit has been assaulted, we don't know who the oppressor is. Exactly. We assume that the oppressor is from the upper caste. That's the default assumption. Sure. If the case eventually gets to be shown to be false, they don't remove that from the statistics. Okay. They don't verify. They say these crimes, we have not checked them for authenticity or veracity. We have not checked them for severity. So somebody calling somebody a particular word, alleged, may be considered as assault. There are so many caveats given to this, but here's the saddest part. The MHA even says many of these crimes could even be by the lowest castes on the lowest castes. So it's not like these crimes are occurring just because of the upper castes on the lower, but the CRD doesn't care. They take all of this data, blame it all on a hostile set of upper caste Indians. I have never seen a civil rights agency, let me repeat this, you have a civil rights agency targeting a set of people using generalities, using fraudulent statistics from the United States, fraudulent statistics that should not be read the way they are from India, to make this narrative. So what's important for your audience to know is you are being targeted, even though you may be sitting in Jabalpur or Bhopal, it doesn't matter. The CRD believes they know more about you hardworking farmer doing good things in your life. The CRD thinks they know more about you and your state of mind than you.
Sundar, I also see this being reflected into, earlier DEI and now ASG. Am I right in this? Because, that is a way to push this kind of agenda and show the other society as not stratified, but more hierarchical, oppressive, and, very, very, which disempowers what they call the lower caste.
Yes.
This distinction of upper and lower is also a construct which we did not create ourselves. It has been said about Indians. We always saw ourselves as stratified. We classified ourselves into groups, but we did not look at it as upper or lower in that sense. Though these words have become very common in our vocabulary. So what I see happening here is the ESG, rating of companies now has started to reflect this very attitude that you're talking about.
Yes. Absolutely. And in fact, you mentioned ESG and DEI. I'll focus on the DEI part. In fact, the state agency is working with the Equality Labs, and Equality Labs is open about their DEI. In fact, they push for caste trainings across several companies and universities. They make their money from it. And here's what's being said in these trainings. It's sickening. I mean, there's one thing about calling upper caste Hindus as Nazis. They blame the upper caste for, they basically blame them for all the rapes in India. They target people by community names. It's not like, a generic comment. It's like this community X and Y and Z and T are being named by Equality Labs. They go after Indian festivals. So Diwali is casteist, according to them. Holi is casteist. Indian customs, if you're vegetarian, that's casteist. Heck, asking someone their last name is casteist, knowing which ancestral village they came from is casteist, according to them. And the state agency is using this survey 8 times. Think of how impossible it is in a workplace that if you're an Indian manager, calling somebody home and saying, hey, would you like vegetarian food or not, is considered casteist. Or just finding out asking someone's last name. These are not just benign questions. These are sometimes beautiful social questions of getting to know someone. You take these absolutely simple, benign things, or sometimes nice things, and you call them casteist. So that's the level of targeting. And in terms of DEI, the DEI training involves all of these statements. They go after every Indian leader. Mahatma Gandhi is casteist, along with a bunch of other, like 3 or 4 leaders were named. And these are all on video record, just for information. Everything I'm telling you today is objective, factual, and quotable from their own speeches and their own training seminars. So that's that. And now you mentioned this thing about societies, whether Indians think of themselves as caste or maybe jati or whatever. I want to take a broader view to this. Look, every society in this world has some level of people, grouping, attitudes, prejudices, discrimination, blah. It's human nature. I mean, remember being taught in civics lessons that all men are born equal. Well, let's just call out the bullshit in that statement. Humans are not born equal. Give me a break. I could never be an NBA superstar. I'm not 6 foot, 7 foot tall. You don't want me dunking a basketball. What we need to give is equal opportunity. And nature, for good or for bad, she never intended everyone to look and feel and live exactly alike. That we are different in many ways. there will be prejudices, there will be preferences, there will be discrimination. And that's true of all cultures. India is not unique in that sense. What's important in a Western context is that we have laws protecting everybody. And we have laws that don't single out any one particular ethnicity. And so what's going on with the DEI and ESG movement, coming back to your question, is you have activists and academics who have latched on to this to build careers out of it.
Exactly.
And I don't say that in a subjective manner. This is just purely objective data. In Equality Labs, she's just open about it. And there are, of course, activists in the United States who have made claims without backing up their facts. Right? And so that's where the whole ESG DEI movement is headed.
So, Sundar, Governor Newsom,
That's
that's his name?
Yeah.
Governor Newsom threw out the SB 403. But did that go any further than that? Is the bill still in picture? Is it still active? Are they going to talk on it or discuss it?
Yeah, so first of all, SB 403 passed the legislature and then went to the governor for his final signing. The governor vetoed the bill in October of 2023. And so that 2023 version of the bill has failed. A bill can be brought back, I think, even up to 2 more times. So they could very much bring the bill back in next year, or I think maybe not this year because that deadline has passed, but they could come back in 2025. Is there a mood to do that? I believe so. In fact, the activists are fairly open about it. They've gone drumming up support. And what will happen? Will it pass? I do not know. It's hard to speculate. All I can say is this much, that the bill is based on 2 prongs. The data behind caste discrimination, and there's a constitutional issue to be discussed. The first leg is full of humbug and bullshit. Let's just call out the bullshit straight out. Any legislature voting on this bill, pretending that you have all of these crimes on caste-based crimes, is racially targeting Indian Americans, period. You may want to look into the mirror, wake up every day, look yourself in the morning and say, I racially targeted Indian Americans. And by the way, I have talked to legislatures about this. Let me tell you one of the saddest incidents with one of the progressive legislatures in Silicon Valley. I talked to their staffer and I said, would your legislators simply be asking a critical question? And they say, no, we're not going to do that. I said, you are going to let the fact that there are 10,000-ish assaults by Indian Americans just fly by. You're accusing them. And he said, well, we have different standards of evidence, was his
Different standards
of evidence.
What did you mean by the critical question?
Just asking questions about the data. And the legislative staffer basically refused to. And coming up with all sorts of excuses to get away from the fact that I basically accused them that you are racially targeting Indian Americans. And, you know, it's almost like this laugh and joke, right? Like we can get away with everything. So to answer your question, if the bill comes again, it's very clear that if you're going to use this kind of nonsensical data, you are racially targeting Indian Americans. You must be held responsible. Whether the people hold you responsible or the federal agency eventually holds you responsible, time will tell. Now, the second aspect, there's a constitutional aspect. Is caste a word that is neutral, or does it target Indian Americans? That's a much more separate prong, and a lot of discussion needs to be had. The sad reality in California today is it's wink, wink, nod, nod. The school textbooks teach caste as part of Hinduism. Everyone knows caste refers to South Asia. Wink, wink, nod, nod. A German manager is never going to be sued for caste discrimination.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean there should or shouldn't be a law. But it just means that you must have an honest ethical discussion. Which activist is going to do that? None of them give a damn about it. And that's the sad reality of America. You have activists who have usurped the Dalit cause for their own temporary gains, and including academics. Both of these sets of people cause immense harms to Dalit Americans and to Dalit Indians. But wrapping up on your question on things, the bill can come again, and the same nautanki might happen again.
So Hindu American Foundation also sued CRD.
Yes.
So what came out of that case?
So the HAF has sued the CRD in federal court. And to give you context there, so what the CRD did, and this is important for your audience, it's one thing to attack me. Chalo jane do, I am a roadkill, lagao ilzam, theek hai. I am irreligious. They know that. I've always been that. I've blogged about it. And they asked me, said, I don't practice any religion. So what did the CRD do? The primary manager is irreligious. So let's assign him a religion and a caste and call him Hindu and then attack Hinduism. This is the beautiful logic of the Civil Rights Department. There should be no reason why Hinduism even exists in this case. If you have such a big deal with an irreligious person, go bitch about atheism if all you want, right? Why is Hinduism even in this case? So they come up with this tactic. There are more than 20 things on Hinduism, including
Comments that they made.
the comments that they made. Now remember, in America, a state, the government, there's something called the First Amendment, cannot interpret religion. You cannot take sides. You cannot say this religion is better than blah, whatever.
Right.
The state first says that caste is a strict Hindu hierarchy. They know more than any Hindu scripture, apparently. Good for you, Mr. Government organization. They're not allowed to do that. Then they have all these things about the position of caste and, casteism, has several issues. People are born into it. Hinduism does X, Y, Z, and T, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then you have comparison of people's castes. You're not supposed to interpret their religions, but they'll do whatever they want. Then you have book chapters and comments that have been sent which refer to the complete destruction of Hinduism. They talk about Varna being a bad idea. Now, I want to give clarity here. I don't take offense to these comments. See, offense is never given, it's only taken. I am personally not offended by these comments on Hinduism, not just because I'm irreligious, even if I was a practicing Hindu. What is wrong here is the constitutional issues here. The state can't do that. If you are a random lawyer, आपको भौंकना है Hinduism के बारे में, go all ahead. If you are a preacher and you don't like Hinduism, go for it. I mean, it's unfortunate, but people can do whatever they want. It's the First Amendment. In fact, Hinduism is broad enough to tolerate criticism. आपके गर्दन कटने नहीं वाली है to talk about Hinduism.
That's the safest thing.
It's a beautiful thing, right? Now, with these so-called Western values of the California Civil Rights Department, they know that their actions are unconstitutional. And that is the problem with what the state did. And that is why the Hindu American Foundation has sued them. I want to go one more step here. It's not even whether they violated the Constitution or not. To me, it's deeper than that. It's a mental state of a prosecutor and an agency that can publish such comments with gay abandon. How do you sit in a civil rights organization? The first thing about civil rights is to treat people well, treat people empathetically, not to target people. In what world or planet do you groupify people and target them? It's insane what they have done. So anyway, so the HAF has sued them, but to me this is beyond a lawsuit. It's ethical. And I wish somebody within the California Governor's Organization wakes up. Somebody within the Department of Justice should wake up. In fact, I have an open call, since you're going to put this on YouTube, somebody within the Civil Rights Department, you have so many prosecutors, one of you needs to wake up and become a great whistleblower. You will whistleblow the crap within this organization and do a service to everybody, right? The fact that you have people working in cahoots hiding what they've done is a sad thing.
So, Sundar, I believe you and Ramana have also joined this HAF lawsuit.
Correct.
So, what is your stance in that?
Yeah, so we have independent claims against the Civil Rights Department. So first of all, we are suing the CRD for a very small set of infractions. Of the more than 100 bad things they have done, that day has to come one day. But we are suing them for our constitutional violations. Primarily, the CRD interviewed me. I mentioned I'm irreligious, but they assigned me a Hindu religion and a caste, which they claim is Hindu, which violates my First Amendment rights. So that's bad enough. And of course, they did that to target Hinduism. So that's bad enough. So we're suing them personally on that. Ramana is suing the CRD on one more charge, which is a charge of equal protection. Let me play that out. This is a very sad thing that the CRD did. So they've sued Ramana for harassment. Okay, now Ramana is managing John Doe after I left. And they say that Ramana is harassing John Doe because he asked him to do weekly status reports.
Yeah.
Now, we have this under penalty of perjury. First of all, weekly status reports is not harassment. They should know that. Second, Ramana's boss, Tom Etzer, who's a white American, fantastic, brilliant man, He's the one who says, I want John Doe to file weekly status reports. So
Which
you
is just
took,
part of the job.
it's just part of the job. So you took a white manager's diktat, you assigned it on an Indian manager just to create a case of caste-based harassment.
Okay.
So you're violating Ramana's constitutional rights. You're targeting him simply because he is Indian American, right? So it's called you're violating what's called equal protection, right? So there's this particular claim on that. The reality, of course, is there are a lot more claims against the CRD. If a great whistleblower were to wake up and whistleblow the CRD, you will find things not just in my case, but probably over 8 years of sordid stuff that the CRD has done. And Mr. Kevin Kish, I know you'll be hearing this. You know that very well. You've been there for 7 years. My request to you is to speak the truth. We'll all end up with a better world than where we are today. But I wanted to make that request to the head of the CRD. But yeah, so those are the two things why Ramana and I joined the lawsuit. There's also other Cisco folks who've joined the lawsuit.
Okay. So what are the other constitutional violations that CRD is accused of?
Oh yeah, so they didn't just target Hinduism. So if you look at the way they did it, let me take the example of a Sikh American. I have a Sikh American colleague who we recruited. The state assigns him upper caste.
Okay.
Now, the state also says that Sikhism doesn't have a concept of caste. They put that in their books and narrative. And they say that Sikhism broke away from Hinduism so that they could get rid of the caste system.
Okay.
ठीक है? So you're saying you have a gentleman who's Sikh. He's a practicing Sikh, right? And he doesn't believe in the caste system. You just assigned him upper caste. Where are his constitutional rights? And guess what? They never interviewed him. Because you know what? Kevin Kish knows everybody's mental state more than you or I. In fact, I suspect he knows more about you, Rinku, than you yourself. But that's the CRD for you. This is just one example of how there's no due process given to him. In fact, they assigned upper caste status to all of the folks in my group. These are all a violation of their constitutional rights. And there's more, due process violations. So you tell all these co-workers of mine that you're from India and you've imported the caste system. Well, did you interview them? No, before you made that claim. That's a due process violation, right? So there's many such things that they have done.
So what is the way ahead for you from here, Sundar? What are you doing about all the discrimination that you suffered as an individual?
Yeah, so my focus, as I said, is I don't want to make this case about me. I want to do this for the sake of making change in America. And maybe the change comes back to India. Our first allegiance must be to the truth. In fact, I named my Cisco startup. The name was Candid, C-A-N-D-I-D. And Candid stood for the truth. Because of my experiences from my past startups on how easy it is to manipulate the truth, how easy it is to weaponize people. What I want to do is create change in America. That's what I can focus on now because that's what I've spent time on. And get to a point where a government agency must speak the truth. We need laws that enforce that. A law is one way to do that, but you also need people like the California governor, the Department of Justice, Attorney General. You need people in the executive arm of the government to wake up and say, ye galat hai, this is wrong, let's fix it.
Which their job is.
Which is their job. To give you one more quick factoid, what is not yet in public record, the CRD has suppressed information from so many people. There were 3 women engineers who complained about John Doe. Okay. The CRD suppressed that. A white engineer complained about John Doe. The CRD suppresses that. Hispanic engineers complains about John Doe. The CRD suppresses that. How much? The CRD suppressed more than 3 years of HR records to make all of these claims. Every supervisor of John Doe who's worked closely with him has complained. The CRD has suppressed that. How many things can you suppress to pull this narrative? Just because you want to work with an activist organization and push a law. This is one of the biggest lies that has ever been said on Indians and Indian Americans in America ever in the last probably 30 to 40 years. This must stop. And I want to do this not just for Indian Americans. I know today that there are several other normal Californians who are being affected by the shenanigans of the CRD. The way the CRD behaves in mediation and other aspects is no different from an Al Capone-like organization. I can't even tell you that because of so-called confidentiality, and they have all the methods to force you into silence. I mean, it's like a card game: mediation confidentiality, pending litigation, pending investigation, one-way confidentiality, prosecutorial privilege. I mean, they will throw like 50,000 different ways to hide their crap. Right? So this has to change, and my journey is to enforce change in America.
Thanks for being with us, Sundar. Thanks for telling us your story. I think it's been a tremendous learning for me, for our viewers as well. And I wish you the very best in your case and in your pursuit of truth.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Rinku. Yeah, namaste. Thank you.